Japanese verb conjugation can be tricky, especially when they're called ru verbs or u verbs, iru eru verbs, regular verbs, ichidan, godan. What is what? I'm going to try to explain that to you with this new tool that I created called the Verb Lab. We're going to start with what we call on Japanese verbs, or we call them regular verbs, but they're called godan verbs in Japanese, godan meaning 5-step verbs. And this is going to make you really understand why they're called godan verbs. But we call them regular because most verbs are regular. The majority of the verbs do this pattern, okay? So let's go ahead and load a verb that we already know, iku. Iku means to go. And you'll notice that this got highlighted because that's the final hiragana. Any verb that we load, okay, let me just show you, will end in one of these hiragana without fail. No matter what type of verb we have, it will end in what is called the u form, okay? So for example, kau, to buy, iku, to go, oyogu, to swim, hanasu, to speak, matsu, to wait, shinu, to die, asobu, to play, nomu, to drink, and then a bunch of verbs that end in ru. There's a ton of verbs that end in ru. And that's why if you're learning Japanese, you might hear a verb type called ru verbs. But I'm going to say this again. There is no such thing as a ru verb. This don't exist. Because every single verb type in Japanese can end in ru. It doesn't help the brain at all to hear ru verb, because that would be like calling English verbs to verbs. If the verb has a to in front of it, like to eat, to run, to work, whatever it is, it's a to verb. No, every verb is a to verb, and every verb in Japanese can end in ru. That's why it's a bad naming convention. They also have something called u verbs, which is supposed to be the opposite side of what a ru verb is, but that also doesn't help because kau ends in an u, and you might think, well, if something ends in a ru, it's a ru verb. If it ends in an u, it's an u verb. And that's not even how it works. I'm not even going to go into their explanation. It's subjectively wrong, and I would argue objectively wrong to call them that. We can call them godan, regular. We can call them iru eru and ichidan, which is what we're going to do. We're not going to use the, and I don't know why these other books use it. I really don't. It bothers me. It's always bothered. All right. So going back to iku. Now, iku is regular or godan. And it's 5 steps because when we conjugate the verb, because we can't do much with this version of the verb. We can do some things with it because this is actually the informal way of saying I'm going to go. You could say, iku, I'm going. Iku, hey, what are you doing right now? Somewhere ni iku, I'm going somewhere. And you can use that as informal. But if you want to do anything but the positive formal of I will go, like if you want to say I won't go, or I want to go, or I can go, or let's go, you need to conjugate that verb into a variety of forms. That's what we're going to do. We're going to be using this panel over here. And they're not everything in Japanese, but they're the basics that we learn in Japanese from Zero books 1 through 5. They're kind of the most common ones that you're going to learn. These are what are available when the verb ends in one of these forms. So if we end in a ku, these current orange ones are the only ones that are possible. For example, ikukoto. Ikukoto means going. It makes iku into a noun or a gerund. I don't like the word gerund, but I put it in there for the people that care. It just means you could say, I like going. You can make going into a noun. Same thing with no. And then we're going to save these for a second, the te and the ta forms. That was just a convenient location for me to put them. So what can we do with these 5 steps? I'm going to go through them from top to bottom, then I'm going to focus on a few, okay? We're going to change the ku to the ka form. Now you'll notice that these lit up. These are the only things, well, at least in Japanese from Zero books 1 through 5, okay, which is covering most of the basic stuff, right? So we can say now, ika nai, won't go informal. I won't go, ikanai. Ikana katta, didn't go, informal. Ika naide, don't go. That's what we can do with a form. Those are the forms. What if we take that iku, okay, we were at iku before, and we change it to ki. Now, ki opens up a lot of options because this is the polite way of speaking Japanese. Ikimasu, I will go, or I do go. Ikimashita, I went. Ikimasen, I won't go, or I don't go. Ikimasen deshita, didn't go. Ikimashou, let's go. Ikitai, I want to go. Ikitakatta, I wanted to go. Ikitakunai, I don't want to go. Ikitakunakatta, I didn't want to go. But notice that none of these other ones work. Now, what about e form? We already know what u does, okay? U is the dictionary form. Now let's do ke. Ikemasu, I can go. This is potential form. Ikemashita, I couldn't go. Ikemasen, I can't go. Ikemasen deshita, I couldn't go. Ikeru means can go. This is now essentially a new verb. We can consider this a new verb. It means the verb to go. And we can do a lot from there. We'll get to this in a second. Ikenai, can't go informal. Ikenakatta, couldn't go informal. All right, just one more form. Change to the O form. Look what lit up. Only one thing can happen in this form. Iko, informal of let's do. That was the mashou form just a second ago. Ikimashou is polite for let's go. Iko for regular verbs. Iko. You add an u to the O form and you get the volitional is what it's called. The thing that you are let's gonna do. Iko, let's go. I can say to my wife, kaimono iko, let's go shopping. That works for every verb. Let's just switch the verb up. Let's change to hanasu, to speak. So we've got hanasu, hanasu speaking, hanasu no, speaking. Okay? Let's go change that to the a form. Hanasanai, I don't speak or I won't speak. Hanasanakatta, I didn't speak. Hanasanaide, don't speak. Hanashimasu, will speak, polite. Hanashimashita, spoke. Hanashimasen, I won't speak or I don't speak. Hanashimasen deshita, I didn't speak. Hanashimashou, let's talk, let's speak. Hanashitai, I want to talk. Hanashitakatta, I wanted to talk. Hanashitakunai, I don't want to talk. Hanashitakunakatta, I didn't want to talk. Let's move to se form. What was this e form? E form is always potential. Always. So we switch it to there. Hanasemasu, I can speak. Hanasemashita, I was able to speak. Hanasemasen, I can't speak. Nihongo ga hanasemasen, I can't speak Japanese, which is ironic to say in Japanese. Very ironic. Hanasemasen deshita, I wasn't able to speak. Hanaseru is the informal of to be able to speak. Hanasenai, informal for can't speak, unable to speak. Hanasenakatta, wasn't able to speak. Look at this just for a second. This is a key thing that people sometimes I don't think realize. We have regular verbs and what are called iru eru verbs, okay? I'm going to explain iru eru verbs, then remind me, I'm going to come back to this hanaseru, okay? I'm going to come back to it. Iru eru verbs are what are called ichidan verbs, ichidan, one-step verbs, and let's look at how that works. So I'm going to load taberu. Taberu means to eat, and just like the other u form with the regular verbs, you can add koto to say eating. No also does the same thing, eating, and then we got these tanta forms. But there is no a form. There's no a, e, e, none of these because it's one step. And with the one-step verb, notice that nothing's lit up, but watch when I remove the ru. Everything lights up. I hope that that visual really makes sense to you. For an iru eru verb, when you drop the ru, all of these become available. For example, tabemasu, I will eat or I do eat. Tabemashita, I ate. Tabemasen, I won't or I don't eat. Tabemasen deshita, I didn't eat. Tabemashou, let's eat. Taberu, will eat informal. Tabenai, won't eat informal or don't eat. Tabenakatta, didn't eat. Tabetai, want to eat. Tabetakatta, wanted to eat. Tabetakunai, don't want to eat. Tabetakunakatta, didn't want to eat. Taberareru. Now, these forms right here on this row are not available for godan verbs, okay? For the regular verbs, because regular verbs have e form to make its potentials. But for iru eru verbs, it's drop the ru plus rareru. That's informal to say I can eat or I'm able to eat. Taberareta, informal, I was able to eat or I could eat it. Taberare nai, I can't eat it. Taberare nakatta, I couldn't eat it. Taberaremasu, polite, for I'm able to eat it. Taberaremashita, I was able to eat it. Taberaremasen, I can't eat it. Taberaremasen deshita, I wasn't able to eat it. And to make volitional informal, Notice that the u is missing. The u only works for godan verbs, not for ichidan verbs, only works for regular. Tabeyo. All iru eru verbs. If it's an iru eru verb, you drop the ru and you add yo to say let's. So tabeyo would mean let's eat. Tabenai de, don't eat. Do you see how the iru eru verbs are way easier to conjugate because you don't have to remember any weird conjugation rules? Now, before I move on, let's make sure we understand why we call them iru eru verbs. Japanese call them ichidan because it's one step and that works really well. And I think that's a great thing to have in your brain. But we call them iru eru verbs because iru eru verbs can only end in a ru. Ru, the only thing they can end in. And the hiragana in the second spot right before the ru must be in this line, the e line, or the e line. Okay? So taberu ends in beru, which rhymes with eru. Therefore, it is iru eru. Miru, to look, the last two hiragana, and also the only two hiragana, are miru. They rhyme with iru, so it works. Kiru, to wear, is iru. Rhymes with iru. This iru to be literally is iru. If I load any iru eru verb, this is going to be a load a random one. Ageru. This is an iru eru verb because geru. Eru. If it rhymes with iru or eru in the last two hiragana, it's an iru eru verb. This is the best way to identify an ichidan verb. Let's just load a couple more. Deru, to leave, like to go out. It rhymes with eru, therefore, if we want to conjugate, we drop the ru and all of these things become available for us, okay? Let's do another one. Kakeru, to hang up. Let's say you hang your jacket or something like that. Kakeru, so the way kakeru works, it's iru eru. You got to drop the ru and then all of your conjugations become available. Let's do another iru eru verb. Kariru, to borrow. Kariru, drop the ru. Karimasu, karimashita, karimasho, karinaide, don't borrow. These are all available to us. No other changes need to happen. So it's really easy to use iru eru verbs. Now there are some verbs that look like they're iru eru, but they're not. Let me show you an example. So we've got hashiru. Hashiru ends with shiru, which rhymes with iru, but it's not an iru eru verb. We call these in our books, we call them iru eru exception verbs. Okay, but really guys, they're just regular verbs. Do you notice they're ending in ru, but they're a regular verb type? And iru eru verbs end in ru, but they're a iru eru verb type. And every other verb types can end in a ru. Okay, so let's not call them ru verbs. Let me hit you in the head with that a lot. Ru verbs is only there to confuse the student in my mind. That's all it does, because it makes you do all of these separations in your brain. What type of ru verb is it? Oh, it's this type of a ru verb. It doesn't make sense to call it a ru verb. I'm going to go to my grave saying this, guys. But anyway, the way hashiru works is you have to change it. So for example, hashira nakatta, I didn't run. Hashiranai, I won't run. Hashirimasu, hashirimashita. So you see how we're changing that last hiragana into one of these other forms? Hashiremasu, I can run. Hashiremashita, I was able to run. Hashiremasen, I can't run. Hashiremasen deshita, I wasn't able to run. There's a few of those. By the way, sometimes in iru eru verb, like kiru, to put on like a jacket, like jaketo kiru, this normally, because it's an iru eru verb, it actually says it right here. Oh, you can't see it. Hang on. Boom. See over here? It says it's an iru eru verb. But this kiru is a regular verb. Is that scary? The exact same verb sound, right? So if I was going to say wear a jacket polite, I have to remove the ru and say kimasu. I will wear a jacket. Jaketo o kimasu. Jaketo o kimashita. I wore a jacket. Kyou wa jaketo o kimasen. I'm not going to wear a jacket today. Kino mo kimasen deshita. I didn't wear one yesterday as well. But what about kiru? Kiru is a regular verb, which means I need to jump into this. I need to change it to kiri. Kirimasu. I will cut paper. Kirimashita. I cut paper. Kirimasen. I won't cut paper. Kirimasen deshita. I didn't cut paper, for example. Okay? So that's the difference between a regular verb and an iru eru verb, or the one step or the 5-step verbs. And again, you notice that it doesn't mean anything if it ends in ru. If you can have this verb and this verb, which don't change at all in hiragana, and they have completely different conjugation rules, your brain only fries and you die inside a little bit when you hear it called a ru verb. Now let's go back to what I was gonna say. Let's go to hanasu and let's go to hanaseru. Hanaseru, remember I said when you're in the potential form, hanaseru, think of it as a new verb. Okay, it's a new verb that means can speak. What type of verb would that be? This verb now is an iru eru verb. Even though hanasu is a regular verb or a 5-step, when you jump it into its potential form, it's like a subverb, can speak, and now you just remove ru. And you get access to everything again. Look at that. Everything comes up again. Isn't that crazy? Now, hanasemasu, hanasemashita, can speak, was able to speak, hanasemasen, can't speak. You just drop the ru and add all of the things again. Now, there's things you don't do. You don't say hanasemasho. You don't say that. These don't actually work. You don't say, let's be able to speak. That's weird. But you can say hanasenai. You can say hanaseru, hanasenakatta, hanasetai. I want to be able to speak. Hanasetakatta. I wanted to talk. Hanasitakunai. I don't want to be able to talk. I wanted to be able to talk. These don't work though. You can't go from the potential form to another potential form. It's not really an iru eru verb. It's like a semi iru eru verb. Don't think about it too much. But just know that when you go into potential form, you think of it as a new verb. And that's why it's really important to know how to conjugate iru eru verbs, because every single regular verb without fail has an iru eru form that it can go into, and that's the potential form. And then from there you branch out. It's like a fractal. You know, it looks the same, but it's just a little bit smaller, a little bit less things you can do with it. Hanaseru you ni naritai, also very good. Funny animator Jim TV. Hanaseru you ni naritai means I want to become able to speak. Like I said, not everything is down here. If I had an expanded list that I could go to like another page, yo ni naru would be something I would probably add on there, or yo ni suru. Now, am I covering every verb? I'm not covering every verb. There's irregular verbs. There's irasharu and gozaru, which I call form verbs. Notice that they ended in ru, by the way. Irasharu, gozaru. They end in ru, but when they conjugate, you drop the ru and you have to add an e. So gozaru becomes gozai, and then you add masen. So I'd have to show that on this board. Oh, let me show you one kind of exception, okay? If we go with anything that ends in u. Now, my little program doesn't work for this, but we'll show it with iku first. Remember that the a form up here is always just informal negative. E form is all of the polite forms. U form is the dictionary form. E form is the potential form. O form is volitional, okay? So if I was gonna say, I'm not gonna go, I have to go to ka, ika, nai, informal. So the rule is you go from u form to a form to make these negative informals, right? But what if your verb is kau? You cannot say ka, a, nai. Notice nothing is lit up because that is not an acceptable thing. Ka, a, nai is not a thing. This is the rule. If you end in an u, when you want to go to a form, you have to go to wa. Now it works. Kawa, nai, I won't buy. Kawa nakata, just because it's hard to say kaanai. Kaanai desu ka? Are you not going to buy it? Kawanai desu ka? Are you not going to buy it? Kawanai de. So any verb that does that. So the same thing here with arau, which means to wash, like your car or your body. Okay. Arau doesn't work. It has to be arawa. Arawanai. I'm not going to wash. Arawanakata. I didn't wash. Arawanai de. Don't wash. Okay. I suppose I got to talk about te forms and ta forms just for a second, okay? This is the hard part of Japanese verbs, by the way, because there's a pattern that you have to remember for te form or ta form. Te form is command form. That's what we call it. It does a bunch of things, not just commands. That's just what we settled on as for the name. It's the command form. And ta form is informal past tense form. Let's show you how that works. So ite is do it, right? Go. And itta, I went, informal. There's a pattern for that. Now, we have a whole video on it. It's like a Christmas song. There's two ways to do it. I have a whole video. But basically, it's if it ends in an u, a tsu, utsuru, it goes to te. Utsuru te, bumunu. Bumunu goes to bumunu nde. There's a whole song, okay? And you have to pay attention to what the verb ends with if it's a regular verb because everything changes for it. So for example, oyogu goes to oyoi de or oyoi da. Hanasu goes to hanashite or hanashita. Matsu goes to matte or matta. Shinu, shinde, shinda. So they're a little bit complicated, but iru-eru verbs, just tabete, tabeta. The cool thing about iru-eru verbs is you just drop the ru and you add a te or a ta, and there's no other complications. Every single iru-eru verb. And the same thing, by the way, if we're doing hanaseru, iru-eru form, okay? Hanaseta, oh, it's not there. Hanaseta, I was able to speak. You just drop the ru for past tense, okay? So that's kind of what I wanted to show you. This is the Te and Ta song. Utsurute mumununde kuite uide sushite our command request forms ta tsutate yobu yonde kasukashite yo ikuite is special utsuruta bumununda kuita guida sushita are informal past tense kaukata yomu yonda This was the Te and Ta song. Yes, it was. You can learn Japanese up on FromZero.com. All of the books are up there. There's quizzes, there's study modes. There's really cool things that aren't in the book that I highly recommend. But as always, the materials here are all originating from these books. So if you have the books, that should be enough. And you know what? To be frank, I teach you everything in the videos as well. Maybe not everything, but I teach you most of it. I don't hide anything. We're not gatekeeping. So enjoy. I'll see you on the next Japanese from Zero. Bye-bye. Tsushita is past tense fudging form. Where did I? Second verse right here. Oh my God. That's why no drink except on the right side, on the left side, not the right side.